anything. I guess she never made it to school this morning.
How old's your daughter?
She's 10.
Okay, what's your daughter's name?
Jessica Ridgway.
She's my rock. She's all of our rock.
A mother.
The bright voice of my little girl. She needs to come home.
And a father.
I try to stay positive about it, but yeah, it's hard. I just want to find my daughter.
I watch her walk out the door, and I shut the door, and that's the last time I saw her, and I want to come walking back through that door. That is not ever anything I want, ever, any parent.
Response team unit, they were inside this home much of the afternoon for about 2 hours. They've since left, but they first arrived not even 10 minutes after the Ridgway family left the home. This FBI evidence response team on standby, soon putting on gloves, covering their shoes, then walking in the front door, inside, outside, looking for any sign of Jessica.
Late Wednesday night, police announced a body had been found near a park in the Denver suburb of Arvada. At this point, they won't officially confirm it as 10-year-old Jessica Ridgway, but multiple police sources tell ABC News they believe it is the girl's body.
6 miles from Jessica's home, maintenance workers found a heavy bag on the side of the road.
So you were out, for a better word, hunting?
Yeah, that's the only word I think of.
Westminster, Colorado. Tucked comfortably between Denver and Boulder, it's the kind of suburb that feels like exactly where you'd want to raise a family. Stanley Lake catches fire at sunset, long trails hug Big Dry Creek, the promenade draws people out on weeknights for dinner and a movie. Quiet, familiar, safe. That's what made what happened here so difficult to process. On the morning of October 5th, 2012, a 10-year-old girl kissed her mother goodbye, walked out the front door, and vanished. Not in the middle of the night. Not in some dark, unfamiliar place. In broad daylight on a route she walked every single day, in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone. Her name was Jessica Ridgway. And within hours, an entire city would be holding its breath. What investigators uncovered over the next 19 days is the kind of story that permanently changes how you see the world. The kind that makes you question how something this unthinkable could happen on an ordinary Tuesday. Morning in a quiet American suburb. This is a true crime documentary, and this is Jessica's story. Before we get into it, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And if you're new here, subscribe. We cover cases like this every week, and you won't want to miss what's coming. Jessica Ridgway was born to Sarah and Jeremiah, 2 parents who, despite going their separate ways years earlier, never stopped putting their daughter first. Jeremiah had since moved to Missouri, and like a lot of families navigating distance and custody arrangements, things weren't always simple. But by every account, Jessica had a real relationship with both of her parents. She was loved, deeply. She lived in Westminster with her mom, her grandmother, and her aunt. And if you'd asked anyone who knew her to describe her in one word, they probably would have said joy. Teachers called her radiant, always smiling, always the first hand in the air, always ready to make a new friend just by starting a conversation. She was the kind of kid who didn't just show up to school, she genuinely wanted to be there. Outside the classroom, she was all energy. She choreographed her own little dance routines, made up songs out of nowhere, and was obsessed with animals. She had her favorite shows, Victorious, Wizards of Waverly Place, and once she decided she wanted to learn something, she didn't stop until she had it figured out. Determination, at 10 years old. Her grandmother would later recall the morning of October 5th, 2012, in detail that only grief keeps sharp. Jessica woke up at exactly 7:45. She had actually asked her mom to buy her an alarm clock recently, said she wanted to start waking up on her own, more independent. That was so Jessica. She watched a little TV, ate a granola bar, changed her clothes. Then she and her mom sat together and peeled an orange for her to take to school. She bundled up in her coat, said goodbye, and walked out the door. The plan was simple. Walk to Chelsea Park, about 5 minutes from home, meet up with her friends at their usual spot, and head to school together. She did it all the time. It was routine. But she never showed up at the park. Her friends waited in as long as they could, then kept walking so they wouldn't be late. Nobody thought much of it at first, except with Jessica, things like this just didn't happen. She was never late. She never missed a day. So when 10 o'clock came and went with no sign of her, her teachers picked up the phone and called Sarah. Sarah had worked the night shift, 10 p.m. straight through to 7 a.m. After walking Jessica out that morning, she had gone straight to bed. She didn't hear the call. The school left a voicemail that sat unheard until 4:30 that afternoon. When Sarah finally listened to it, her first instinct was that there had to be some kind of mistake. She drove past the park, stopped by the school, knocked on doors at her friends' houses. No one had seen her. Nobody knew anything. And that's when she called the Westminster Police Department.
My daughter's missing. I guess she never made it to school this morning.
How old's your daughter?
She's 10.
Okay, what's your daughter's name?
Jessica Ridgway.
There's a moment every parent dreads without ever letting themselves fully imagine it. That cold, sinking feeling when you realize your child didn't just wander off. By 9:15 that same evening, investigators had seen enough. This was an abduction. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation issued an Amber Alert for Jessica Ridgway.
I want to show you this little girl's picture, Jessica Ridgway. She never made it to school, and right away, the school called the little girl's mother. The mom works nights, so she didn't get the message until much later in the day, and that's what's bringing us to where we are right now. A massive search taking place. Right now, police, along with the CBI, have issued an Amber Alert, and the reason is this. It's because of the amount of time that has passed since she was last seen.
At least 50 police officers, including the FBI, are searching right now.
When we start with an 8-hour delay or a delay as substantial as this, the distance that she could have wandered, even on her own, just gets huge.
Police say Jessica's father, who lives out of state, is in a custody battle with Jessica's mother. They do not believe Jessica is with him, but are not ruling anyone out.
We don't have a person of interest, and we're going to look at every angle.
Nothing like this has really ever happened. It's always surprising when something happens here.
So as you can hear from that interview, this is a very serious situation. Normally Jessica meets some friends at a park, which is just about 3 blocks from her home. Then the entire group walks to Witt Elementary. The girls that she usually walks with have been interviewed. They did not see her today, but at such a young age, as of 10 years old, they just did not think much of it. Again, we do want to show the picture of Jessica Ridgway, 10 years old, 4'10" in height with shoulder blonde hair. She has blue eyes. She is wearing a winter jacket, I'm told, a black puffy jacket, but with weather like this, it's still of concern. Again, search is taking place across Westminster. In fact, if you are concerned, you would like to help, you can come here to the Westview Recreation Center. We're at the intersection of 108th and Oak, again, in Westminster.
But by then, the sun was long gone and the temperature had dropped hard. A very long night had already begun. Within hours, Westminster looked like a city at war with the dark. Firefighters dragged out thermal imaging equipment and flooded Chelsea Park with powerful lights that turned the night almost white. Police wanted to deploy a helicopter with night vision, but the temperature had dropped so low there was a real risk of ice forming on the rotor blades. Too dangerous to fly, so they worked the ground.
We're using every resource we have. We're trying to use air or helicopters that have equipment that can search in the dark. Unfortunately, the weather has grounded those, so we're not able to use that tool. We've brought our fire department in who has equipment that sees in the dark, thermal imaging equipment, so they're out searching with that. Over 400 faculty and every parent that has a student attending Witt Elementary has received the notification that Jessica is missing.
When the sun comes up, police say they will be bringing in even more people to help search for Jessica. They're also hoping for a break in the weather so they can get helicopters up to search from the sky.
And they were not alone. Volunteers showed up in numbers that nobody had anticipated. Officers and civilians moved together through backyards, open fields, creek beds, wooded stretches, anywhere a child could be hidden or lost. Every vehicle entering or leaving the neighborhood was photographed. Officers stood at crosswalks around the clock. Mailboxes and trees across Westminster were wrapped in purple ribbons, Jessica's favorite color. The community wasn't just watching, it was moving. Around 2 a.m., authorities asked the volunteers to go home, rest, and return at sunrise. By that point, the Westminster Police Department had already established a formal command center and called in reinforcements. The FBI stepped in. 12 other agencies joined. In the end, more than 1,000 people would work this case, grinding through over 4,000 tips. Back at Witt Elementary, investigators found something that stopped them cold. Inside Jessica's desk was her notebook. Homework completed, everything in order. And on one of the pages, in her own handwriting, she had written, "Don't play in the park alone and be careful of strangers." She knew. She was careful. She was aware, which told investigators something important. The idea that Jessica would have willingly approached someone she didn't know just didn't hold up. That left two possibilities. Either she was lured away by someone she trusted, or she was taken so fast she never had a chance to react. 4 days after she disappeared, Jessica's family stepped outside for the first time to speak to the press. Until that moment, they simply couldn't bring themselves to face the cameras. But they had been cooperating with investigators from the very beginning, providing DNA samples without hesitation.
And Mike, the FBI Mobile Evidence Response Team unit, they were inside this home much of the afternoon for about 2 hours. They've since left, but they first arrived not even 10 minutes after the Ridgway family left the home. This FBI Evidence Response Team on standby, soon putting on gloves, covering their shoes, then walking in the front door, inside, outside, looking for any sign of Jessica.
And this is the first time we are hearing from Jessica's mother and father. Both deny any involvement in her disappearance. Both are holding out hope.
She's my rock. She's all of our rock.
A mother.
The bright voice of my little girl. She needs to come home.
And a father.
I try to stay positive about it, but yeah, it's hard. I just want to find my daughter.
I watch her walk out the door, and I shut the door. And that's the last time I saw her, and I want to come walking back through that door.
After searches by ground and by air, still no sign of the 10-year-old. And the reality of all of this is now very real.
That is not ever anything I want, ever, any parent.
Police cleared both parents early. The working theory had solidified. This was the work of a stranger. Then came the first discovery. A man living about 6.5 miles away came across something while going about his day. A backpack. Inside, glasses, a water bottle, and a piece of clothing. He didn't connect it to the search happening miles away, so he posted about it online. Someone else made the connection and called 911. When Sarah heard about the backpack, she felt something she hadn't felt in days. A flicker of hope. Fragile and desperate, but real. Maybe Jessica was still out there. Maybe she was alive.
Yeah. Over the weekend, a glimpse of optimism for the family when Jessica's backpack and water bottle were found in another subdivision 6 miles away.
I felt a sliver of hope. I figured, if something really bad happened to her, they wouldn't have got rid of the backpack just sitting there.
That hope lasted less than 24 hours. The following day, maintenance workers came across a heavy bag sitting along the side of a road, roughly 6 miles from Jessica's home. They didn't open it. They called authorities immediately. Inside, investigators made a discovery that no one was prepared for.
Late Wednesday night, police announced a body had been found near a park in the Denver suburb of Arvada. At this point, they won't officially confirm it as 10-year-old Jessica Ridgway, but multiple police sources tell ABC News they believe it is the girl's body.
Forensic testing confirmed the remains belonged to Jessica Ridgway. A full determination of what had happened to her was not yet possible, but what was clear was that this case had just shifted into something far more serious. A wooden cross was also recovered at the scene. Details surrounding it were kept close, but investigators described it as a critical piece of evidence. Westminster Police Chief Lee Burke addressed the public with the words that landed like a weight across the entire city. "Our focus has shifted," he said, "from searching for Jessica to seeking justice for Jessica. We understand that there is a perpetrator at large in our community.
We pray for the Ridgway family that you would comfort them.
Prayer, candlelight, and song Saturday night to remember a life taken far too soon.
It amazes me that people can be that sick in this world.
Hundreds took part in the vigil for Jessica Ridgway in Westminster, Heather Fong and her family among them after her son said he wanted to light a candle for Jessica.
I feel like it kind of takes their childhood away because you teach them the world is a really good place, but then you have to train them now that you can't talk to strangers.
As the community mourns the loss of Jessica, police are stepping up efforts to find her killer. Saturday, investigators continue trying to develop leads. They've been going over sex offender lists and have even been reviewing data from cell phone towers around key locations in the case, hoping if a number registered at all of them, it could help lead to a suspect.
I don't know if he can make sense of it. We just need justice for Jessica, though. And so all the kids are safe.
The search was over. The investigation had just begun. As investigators dug deeper, something surfaced that reframed the entire case. 4 months earlier, on Memorial Day, a woman out jogging near Kettner Lake had been attacked from behind. A man came out of nowhere and pressed a cloth over her face. She was dragged into nearby bushes, but she fought back, broke free, and ran. The description she gave was limited but specific. A white male, somewhere between 5 feet 6 inches and 5 feet 8 inches, average build. That was about all she could offer. At the time, it was treated as an isolated incident. Frightening, but isolated. It wasn't. The attack had happened just steps away from where Jessica was believed to have been taken, and when DNA recovered from that scene was cross-referenced with evidence from Jessica's case, the match was exact. Same perpetrator, 2 incidents, 4 months apart. FBI spokesperson Dave Jolie told the public plainly, everyone needed to remain in a state of maximum alert. A psychological profile was released. The net was tightening, but the person at the center of it was still out there.
In Jessica Ridgway's community of Westminster, Colorado this morning, there is sadness, anger, and fear.
This is horrible. This is absolutely horrible.
That a killer is on the loose.
I want to stress that we recognize that there is a predator at large in our community.
With state, local, and federal agents working Jessica's murder, police have scoured her neighborhood and the community for clues. More than 1,500 tips have poured in. 500 homes searched. A manhunt underway for a killer still on the street. Former FBI profiler Clint Van Zandt.
This is a whole nother type of predator. Number one, to commit a horrible act to kidnap a child. But number two, to dispose of a body this way puts this guy in a breed almost by himself.
We haven't identified an individual. So we're talking and conveying to our community the importance of looking at behavioral changes. Unfortunately, it's somebody's family member, a neighbor, a friend.
Dozens of worried residents came to Tom Olbrich Saturday for crisis counseling.
Our behavioral analysis unit wants to convey a message to the community and to the public as a whole. They're looking for abnormal behavior, changes in someone's behavior from Jessica's disappearance last Friday until today. It could be something as simple as shaving of their face, could be changing of hair color, cutting of their hair, change in their mood, their personality, parking a vehicle in their garage, and they've always parked it in their driveway. So we suspect that someone in the community knows this individual, and we're asking for the community support once again. The community has been very supportive in the efforts so far to this investigation, and we're asking that they would do this one more time to help us gather new leads and new information.
More than 3,000 people gathered at a memorial service in Arvada to honor Jessica's life. Her favorite songs filled the space. A video of her played on screen. The crowd was a sea of purple. Officers, volunteers, strangers who had followed her story from the beginning, people who had never met her but felt the weight of her absence all the same. Grief has a way of making a community out of people who have nothing else in common. Then came the break investigators had been waiting for.
Those of us involved in this case, unfortunately, never had the privilege of knowing your wonderful daughter. But I can honestly tell you, we feel like we did. We feel like she's part of our family, and we feel like we've lost part of our family.
After detectives released images of the wooden cross found at the scene, a neighbor came forward. She lived near a family called the Siggs, and recognized the cross immediately. She contacted the FBI and told them about Austin Sigg, a 17-year-old who lived nearby with his mother, Mindy. He owned a cross that looked almost identical, but that wasn't the only thing she mentioned. She also told them that Austin had a deeply troubling obsession with death, and with the process of how living things decompose over time. Investigators brought Austin in for questioning. He was calm. He said he had been home asleep the day Jessica disappeared. He agreed to provide a DNA sample without hesitation, and agents noticed he was wearing a cross nearly identical to the one in the photos. His answers seemed to hold up. They collected the swab, logged it, and kept moving door to door through the neighborhood. Standard procedure was to send results back in sealed envelopes. If the envelope came back empty, the DNA was not a match. Austin's envelope came back empty. He was taken off the radar. But on October 22nd, news coverage intensified around the DNA link connecting Jessica's case to the earlier attack on the jogger. That same day, Austin told his classmates he felt violently ill. Something was wrong, he said. That night, he slept in his mother's bed, and the next morning, he told Mindy he needed to confess something. She looked at him and asked immediately, "Is this about Jessica?" "I just knew," she later said. "I don't know how. I just knew." When he confirmed it, Mindy collapsed to the floor, crying, shaking, the same words looping in her head over and over. "This can't be happening." "I'm going to prison," Austin told her. "I know," she said. "You need to call the police. Can you do it for me?" Mindy picked up the phone and dialed 911. The call lasted nearly 18 minutes.
Hi, this is Molly at Westminster Police. Can I help you?
Hi, I need you to come to my house. My son wants to turn himself in for the Jessica Ridgway murder.
Can you tell me exactly what he said?
But he did it, and he gave me details, and her remains are in my house.
Did you see them?
No.
Is he there with you?
Yes.
Is he cooperative?
Yes.
What is your son's name?
Austin Sigg.
Okay, I understand that you're probably, feeling pretty crappy right now, but I want you to know that you did the right thing.
He did it. He just wanted me to call. He is turning himself in.
Okay, do you think that he's going to be cooperative with the officers?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you think that Austin would talk to me?
Will you talk to him? Yeah, hold on.
Okay.
Hello.
Is this Austin?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Austin. This is Molly at the Westminster Police Department.
Hi.
Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on right now, or how you're feeling, or how did this come about?
I don't exactly get why you're asking these questions. I murdered Jessica Ridgway.
Okay.
I have proof that I did it. There is no other question. You just have to send a squad car, something down here, and I will answer all the questions that you want to ask, or anyone wants to ask of me as soon as you gotta get down here.
Okay. Have you committed any crimes like this before? Do you have a criminal history of any sort?
The only other thing that I have done that before this was the Kentner Lake incident where the woman got attacked. That was me.
Ma'am, I understand you want to call your husband, and I'm sorry, but I would like to keep you guys on the phone just until the officers get a little bit closer.
Well, how far are they?
They're going to be there in just a few minutes. Is Austin still there with you?
Yeah, I won't let him out of my sight.
Okay. Has Austin been diagnosed with any mental health issues? Does he see a counselor or take any medication?
He saw a counselor years ago for porn.
Okay.
I can't breathe.
Take some deep breaths for me. Do you want me to start you an ambulance?
No.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Okay, what just happened?
I opened the window.
What's that?
I just opened the window.
Okay.
I need air.
Okay. Mindy, take a couple deep breaths for me, okay? You tell me when the officers get there. They're coming to your front door. Okay?
I don't see them. I don't see them yet.
You don't see them?
No.
Is Austin okay with you right now?
Yeah, he's just getting really anxious, and so am I.
Okay.
They're here. They're coming up.
They're coming up to the door?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you see the plainclothes officers and their badges?
Yeah, they're here.
Okay, I'll let you go speak with them, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Goodbye.
And 19 days after Jessica Ridgway walked out her front door for the last time, Austin Sigg walked into a police station. What came out during that interrogation is the kind of thing that stays with you, not because of the details alone, but because of how he delivered them. Flat. composed, almost clinical. Like he was recounting something he had read about rather than something he had done. Austin confessed to the jogger attack first. He told investigators he had approached the woman from behind and pressed a treated cloth over her face. When she broke free and escaped, he wasn't deterred. He was recalibrating. He told police the failed attempt made him rethink his approach entirely. He felt he needed a smaller, more vulnerable victim, someone he could overpower without resistance. When investigators asked what he would have done if the jogger hadn't escaped, he answered without hesitation. Probably the same thing he did to Jessica, he said. He then walked them through October 5th.
So you were out, for a better word, hunting?
Yeah, that's the only word I think of.
And did you know Jessica?
No.
Had you ever seen her before?
Jessica had been in the park, packing snowballs, just being a kid. Austin had been watching. He parked his Jeep in a spot where it wouldn't draw attention, then lowered himself into the back seat so she couldn't see him as she walked past. When the moment came, he acted. Jessica screamed. There was no one around to hear her. He restrained her and drove her to his home. He told investigators, "Random place, random time, just random everything. The second I pulled her into the car, I already knew what was going to happen." At the house, he said he brought her inside and turned on cartoons. He told her everything was going to be okay, that she would be going home to her mom soon. Jessica, 10 years old and terrified, kept asking who he was, whether he knew her mom. He answered her. He lied to her face over and over while she sat there watching television. She had an accident out of fear. He made her change clothes and gave her one of his t-shirts. He cut her hair. Then he told her to turn her back to him. What happened next is something no words in a documentary should linger on. Jessica lost her life inside, that home. She never made it back to her mom. She never made it back to school. She was gone before the search for her had even truly begun. Austin admitted that what drove him that morning was a deeply troubling state of mind that he had been unable to control for years. Despite his claims about what did and did not happen inside that home, the charges prosecutors ultimately brought against him, and the evidence recovered from his devices, painted a far more serious picture. The full scope of what Jessica endured that day is something investigators understood far better than anything Austin was willing to fully admit. What came next revealed the lengths he had gone to in order to cover his tracks. Investigators discovered that Austin had taken deliberate and calculated steps to conceal what had happened. Steps that reflected not panic, but planning. He later told investigators where the remainder of Jessica's remains could be found, in a concealed space beneath the house. That is exactly where they were recovered. Authorities also found biological evidence within the home's plumbing, confirming that his attempts to eliminate evidence had extended deep into the property. Jessica had already been gone for hours before her mother even realized she hadn't made it to school. Then came a revelation that shook the investigation from the inside. When detectives went back through their records, they uncovered something almost impossible to believe. Austin's original DNA swab, the one he had willingly provided during questioning, had been lost. Never tested. The empty envelope bearing his name wasn't a cleared result. It was an administrative failure, a mistake that had quietly cost 19 days. A second analysis was ordered immediately. The result came back fast and unambiguous. Austin Sigg's DNA matched evidence from both the jogger incident and Jessica's case. When his Jeep was towed and processed, investigators found broken restraints inside the vehicle. Exactly consistent with what Austin had described, every piece had locked into place. To understand what happened to Jessica Ridgway, you have to try, as uncomfortable as it is, to understand the person who took her. Not to excuse anything, not to explain it away, but because the warning signs were there, scattered across years, and they went unanswered long enough for the worst possible outcome to unfold. Austin Sigg was 17 years old when he took Jessica's life. By the time investigators sat across from him in that interrogation room, they weren't looking at someone who had made a terrible decision in a single moment. They were looking at someone who had been quietly unraveling for years, slowly, deliberately, and largely out of sight. His parents had divorced some years earlier, but by most accounts, both Robert and Mindy remained involved and genuinely tried to support their son. In 2008, concerned about his behavior, they took him to a faith-based counselor. Austin later said it didn't help. Not even close. Whatever grip the obsession already had on him at that point, it didn't loosen. It tightened. He described feeling like things were under control for maybe a month after the sessions ended, and then sliding right back to where he had been, except worse. By 2009, his doctors were alarmed enough to contact his father directly and strongly urge him to monitor and restrict Austin's access to television and computers.
All right, well, police in suburban Denver are still removing evidence from the home of a teenage college student in custody for the kidnapping and murder of 10-year-old Jessica Ridgway.
That recommendation was made when Austin was 14 years old. He later told investigators his exposure to deeply disturbing illegal online content had begun when he was just 12. What he consumed over those years wasn't just troubling, it was escalating. Increasingly violent and deeply disturbing material that he said he couldn't stop seeking out. He described the pull of it as something that grew heavier and darker over time until it had taken over completely. He told investigators that after finishing his sessions with the counselor, he felt in control for a short period. But it didn't even last a month before everything came rushing back, worse than before. Alongside that, a fixation on death had been quietly growing for years. People around him had noticed. A former classmate who had known Austin since middle school described him as clearly intelligent but deeply withdrawn, someone who talked to himself, struggled with basic social interaction, and carried an energy that was difficult to name but impossible to ignore. He was being bullied, partly over his voice, and eventually stepped away from traditional school altogether, earning his equivalency certificate independently instead. He later enrolled at a local college and began taking courses in mortuary science. He wanted to work with the deceased professionally. In the context of everything investigators would later learn about him, that detail is a difficult one to sit with. A psychologist who reviewed the full case, Files was direct in her assessment. Despite the difficult elements of Austin's background, his parents' separation, his father Robert's documented history involving assault, domestic violence, and other serious offenses,
courtroom sketches of Austin Sigg, the teenager pleading not guilty to killing 10-year-old Jessica Ridgway, even though he admitted it.
Well, this could very well be a placeholder plea. Even though Austin Sigg pled not guilty on all counts, he has the option to modify that later, including guilty and not guilty by reason of
There was no evidence that Austin himself had experienced abuse as a child. His home life, while imperfect, had been relatively stable. He had family support. He had access to professional help. And yet none of it had been enough to redirect what was building inside him. Her conclusion was unambiguous. This was not someone who had acted impulsively and later felt remorse. There was no compassion shown toward Jessica. Not during, not after. This was calculated behavior carried out by someone who had spent years mentally arriving at that moment. The evidence prosecutors presented confirmed exactly that. Austin had researched how to create the substance used in the jogger attack. He had searched online for locations where people were most vulnerable to being taken. He had studied forensic methods specifically to understand how investigators work, and how to stay ahead of them. He told interrogators himself that those who successfully carry out multiple crimes are the ones who know how to eliminate evidence. He was 17 years old when he said that. One neighbor named Emily shared something that has stayed with many people who followed this case. When news broke about Jessica's disappearance, Emily's 11-year-old daughter came straight to her and said she knew exactly who was responsible.
I feel bad that I dismissed it.
When Emily Alexander's 11-year-old daughter said she knew who kidnapped Jessica, no one believed her.
She goes, "Mom, oh my God, I know who did it." And I go, "Who?" And she goes, "The goth teenager from the park."
At this park just down the road, she says a teenage boy had been acting strangely, staring at her daughter, walking by their home.
And she pointed him out right across the street from our house.
Emily Alexander says her daughter's friends may have been what saved her.
If she had been at the park alone, there's no telling, what could have happened. I should have let her know that the moment she feels uncomfortable, that she should trust that, and that, it's better to be safe than...
Emily admitted she brushed it off in the moment. When Austin was arrested shortly after, that conversation came rushing back with full force. Even a child had seen something the adults around him had chosen not to look at directly. There was something uniquely haunting about that. Not just what Austin did, but how visible the signs were. To neighbors, to classmates, to a child down the street. And how the path from those early warnings to that October morning went uninterrupted for years. On October 30th, 2012, Austin Sigg was charged as an adult. 17 counts in total, covering the full scope of what he had done to Jessica, the serious offenses recovered from his devices, and the charges tied to the earlier attack on the jogger. The weight of that list left little room for interpretation. Prosecutors knew exactly what kind of case they were dealing with. Austin entered a plea of not guilty to everything. Given his detailed confession, given that Jessica's remains had been recovered inside his home, given the physical evidence found in his vehicle and throughout the property, that plea stunned a lot of people. The thought of a full trial, of having every last detail aired publicly, of Jessica's family having to sit through all of it, felt almost unbearable to those who had followed the case from the beginning. His defense team went to work. They argued that Austin's actions were impulsive rather than premeditated, that he himself was still trying to understand what had driven him. They pointed to complications during his mother's pregnancy, difficulties at birth, and 3 surgeries he underwent in early childhood. They cited his father Robert's extensive history of serious legal troubles. They worked to construct a portrait of a young man shaped by circumstances beyond his control. Prosecutors weren't moved. The evidence didn't bend to fit that narrative. Then on October 1st, 2013, almost exactly 1 year after Jessica left for school and just 2 days before the trial was set to begin, Austin Sigg changed his plea. Against his own attorney's advice, he stood up and pleaded guilty to 15 charges: first-degree murder, kidnapping, attempted kidnapping, serious offenses against Jessica, and more.
The court would be presumptuous and speculative to assume at this early age, because of an act by a child, that child would never be appropriate for parole.
For many people who had followed every development in this case, that moment felt like a long, overdue acknowledgement of what everyone already knew. On November 19th, 2013, Judge Stephen Munsinger sentenced Austin Sigg in a Jefferson County courtroom for what he did to Jessica. 40 years. On top of that, 86 additional years for the remaining charges. Because Austin had been 17 at the time, certain sentencing provisions technically existed under guidelines for juvenile offenders. But those additional 86 years rendered that entirely irrelevant. Austin Sigg will spend the rest of his life behind bars. District Attorney Peter Weir was unambiguous. There was no plea arrangement, he said, and no concessions, no leniency of any kind offered or given. Judge Munsinger was equally clear.
Founding fathers of this country did not set forth an amendment that says when a young man kidnaps, robs, sexually assaults, and murders and dismembers a 10-year-old girl, that everything other than the murder should be excused.
What we do know is that this young man is dangerous. The only way to protect the community from him is to keep him confined forever. They have never seen an offense like this committed by someone under 18, ever. Not in this county, not in this state, not in this country.
This case practically screams for a life sentence. Austin stood at the sentencing and said nothing. No statement, no acknowledgement of the family sitting in that same room. No expressions of any kind crossed his face as the sentence was read aloud.
So, I'm actually not going to say anything today because I don't think that the defendant has the right to hear how he affected me, my family, or who Jessica was. Once we walk out of this courtroom, we'll not remember his name, and we'll all only remember Jessica and the legacy she created, as well as the Lassie Project in which she inspired. Thank you. Thank you.
He was later transferred to a facility out of state for his own safety. Back in Westminster, the people who had loved Jessica were left to do what grieving people always have to do: find a way to keep living inside a loss that never fully closes. Jessica's mother, Sarah, described her daughter's passing the way only someone carrying that weight every single day could. She said it was like a plate shattering, with one piece lost forever. You can try to glue it back together, she said, but the cracks never go away. It will never be whole again, no matter how hard you try. Mindy Sigg, the mother who made that 18-minute call to 911 and turned her own son in, said she never once regretted that decision, not for a single moment. She threw herself fully into therapy and worked hard to rebuild her life. She still thinks about Austin. She still mourns the child she raised, the baby she remembered as bright and kind and full of promise. But she has not spoken to him since the day he was arrested. He has never reached out either. I can't allow him to lie to me, she said. I never got an answer to the question why. And I need at least something. When asked what she would say to Jessica's family, Mindy didn't hesitate. I would literally give my life to change what happened. I would trade places with Jessica in a heartbeat. Jessica's grandmother responded with words that moved an entire courtroom. We understand that she lost her son too, she said. It's a different kind of loss, but she still lost him. My heart goes out to her. If we'd been allowed to hug her in court, we probably would have. 5 years after losing her daughter, Sarah gave birth to a little girl named Anna.
The reminders of her are everywhere.
Lots of purple.
Her sweet 10-year-old smile.
Her pictures everywhere.
Her favorite color.
We all still wear purple. Purple's everywhere in our house.
I think she makes her presence known.
That's how Sarah Pindell Ridgway and her family remember Jessica.
We still talk about her. She still exists for us.
Yes, it's hard, and it's the hardest thing that anybody could possibly do is to move forward. I need to remember who she was and who I would have hoped she would have become, and know that I need to keep moving forward. She was born October 15th. Anna Christine Pindell Ridgway. Her and her sister share the same middle name, and then
her eyes are blue, different blue than Jessica's, but they're blue.
She loves her hands. They're her favorite thing in the whole wide world.
I think Jessica would be enamored.
She's very much ever present. We talk to Jessica, and I think she kind of turns her head. It looks like she's talking to somebody over in the distance, so I think her sister definitely comes and visits and leaves her little sparkly way around. And
Mom and Grandma say they'll tell Anna all about Jessica's sparkle as soon as she's old enough.
I'm mostly going to say that, she has a big sister that left before she was born.
They want to raise her without fear.
I'm going to try not to let what happened overshadow how I raise Anna, because I don't want her to be smothered a little bit. I want her to be able to have her own little life.
She's not replaced, she's just expanded.
She definitely has an extra special angel watching over her.
She said she knows Jessica would have been the most incredible big sister, but now she believes Jessica watches over her family in a different way. Quietly, always present, never truly gone. The community Jessica grew up in never stopped honoring her memory. A memorial playground was built in her name. A custom 40-foot track, knock-knock jokes engraved by her classmates, swings, wrapped in ribbons, everything in purple.
This park has just been transformed here. Everywhere you look, there are hints of Jessica, from the purple that is speckled throughout the park to this dragonfly teeter-totter, which we're told represents a school project she was particularly fond of that she was working on at the time of her disappearance.
The Lassie Project, inspired by her case, provides a free service that helps parents alert their entire local community within seconds the moment a child goes missing. And the Jessica Ridgway Cheer Camp exists because she once made her mom a promise that she would be a cheerleader who was kind to everyone, no matter what. That was Jessica. All the way to the very end. She was 10 years old. She was walking to school on a Tuesday morning. She had eaten a granola bar for breakfast and packed half an orange in her bag. She had her whole life ahead of her, and in a single moment, on an ordinary street in a quiet Colorado suburb, all of it was taken away. Some stories stay with you not because of their darkness, but because of the light they carry. Jessica Ridgway was that light, and the people who loved her have made sure the world never forgets it. If the story moved you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel keep telling stories that matter. Drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. We'll see you in the next one.